Hey everyone, it's Nightlight9, and in this video we're going through the new limited time crisis dungeon, Mythril Mine. I will start out by saying I was only able to get an S on this. Why? Well, because I did a lot of testing with different builds, trying to be extremely new player friendly, and didn't realize that I would be capped on how many chances I could buy my way into. It does cap at 5. So yes, I spent 500 crystals running this and 3 dungeon key vouchers, just trying a lot of different builds, and didn't really, I don't know, I think it's dumb that they've capped this at 5. I don't understand why they wouldn't want you to be able to spend more crystals, but that's what it is. I didn't want to go in here with like a 230,000 combat power team. I wanted to make it something that new players could also benefit from. So this is the team that we actually used, just under 179,000 combat power. We did get an S, just not an S plus. And because I'm locked out of being able to attempt this dungeon again till next Sunday, people were asking me to put it out, so I'm going to put it out the way it is. So, a couple things we'll pay attention to. 1, wind potency plus 20%, magic attack minus 50%. So unfortunately, really can't be setting up anybody to do magic attack damage, at least not any of the main people. If we look at symbol enemy info, every boss is weak to wind. The only resistances, I believe, are to fire and earth, so I would mostly stay away from those. And sigils, we're going to need triangle and circle. Let's start off with Sephiroth. He's our main damage dealer, even though it's not that amazing. His physical attack is just under 2,800. We do have Dark Harbinger for the wind mastery, for the extra plus 20% wind damage. However, we don't really have a lot of good wind weapons. So he's using a 5-star Dark Heavens, and most of these are stat sticks with the exception of bringing a Fyra. And yes, specifically Fyra instead of Fyra Blow. And the reason for that is when you fight the boss that does the shields, right, he's going to alternate between wind and fire. Also, though, depending on what type of damage you do, he will alternate whether he has a physical or a magical defense shield. And because our team is set up to do wind physical damage, I want to make sure that when he's putting up the fire block, he's also taking off or putting up, not the physical attack block, so that we can get the most damage in. Torn Wing here for a secondary weapon. Most of the enemies are doing pretty big physical attack moves, so I want to be able to use Solid Barrier to shield my team. For sub-equipment, we've gone with mostly just physical attack buffs. So Marasame just has really good physical attack stats and boosts physical attack. And then Amaranth's Claws, physical ability potency is the #1 thing there. Same thing with Zidane's Sword, also the physical attack. So here's what we got. We have wind potency level 2, which is pretty cringe. We have physical ability potency level 3, which is basically trying to make up for our lack of wind potency. We're using Judgment Bolt because none of the enemies are strong against lightning, and mostly the summons are good to clear out adds in fights where you want to be able to get to the boss right away. Moving over to Tifa. She's set up to do wind damage as well with motor drive. In fact, she probably does slightly more wind damage than Sephiroth. And along with that, we've equipped the Amaranth Gear to boost the physical ability potency because, again, we just don't have a lot of wind potency. This leather gloves, I was really kind of torn between what secondary item to bring for Tifa, and really it kind of depends to an extent how the bosses are for you and what order you do them in. But the dragon does quite a bit of physical DPS, and he can be debuffed on his physical attack. So I brought Omni Strike here for that particular fight, and because I didn't really need anything else specifically. We're using Somersault for a debuff, and it's particularly good against Rude in the very last final boss stage. And again, we've got Fyra magic specifically for the Mad Anchor fight, where he's going to switch that back and forth. We have Circle Sigil Break, and then this materia up here is just for a stat stick. For sub-equipment, we went with Radiant Edge because of our ability for physical attack, and these are just physical attack and HP. So you can see here, stats are okay, not anything amazing. And last we have Aerith. She's set up to do heals. She's got a single target Cura, which will come in handy for some of the fights. She's got Healing Asuna for poison, and that'll be helpful against the dragon. And then she's got Aurora here to do some wind damage. For sub-equipment, these are all really for survivability, mixes of defense stats and HP, and we do have a pretty high HP stat on her and pretty high defensive stats. If I was going to do this run again, one thing I probably would change is maybe even trying to make Aerith be able to do a little bit more damage with her magic attack stat, because I think the things that I could have done to make this run better were just do things a little bit cleaner, and also just DPS, because getting the bosses down seemed to be the biggest difficulty that I had in this run. But without further delay, we will get to it. So Mythril Mine is one of those dungeons where you can literally do it almost any order you want. Starting off with which one of the bosses you fight first, you have 3 choices. We're going to go up here and do the dragon. You could choose to go south and get a poison resist. There's a couple different ways you can do this. However, I like to do them in the order of most annoying to least annoying, and I think the dragon is the most annoying fight. Therefore, I'm trying to fight him when he's weaker as opposed to stronger. So we took the Healing Asuna for poison for this fight. As I mentioned, there is a poison resist, but I'd rather get the other buffs than that one. So one of the things, try to kill off those dorky face guys first, because you see Aerith has those debuffs to her magical and physical attack. That's what happens if you get hit by the dorky guys. However, this particular team setup just wasn't very good at killing those guys off. I did other runs where I was successful in killing that off. This one it went a little bit different, and that's one of the drawbacks probably to experimenting so heavily, is that you kind of start to get a little bit mixed up in your mind about what's going on in one run versus another run. But anyway, I've sped parts of this fight up considerably because it is a slog. Mostly you're just trying to stay alive, dealing damage, debuffing him. If you notice, I'm constantly using Omni Strike to keep his physical attack down. Every time he does Crushing Bite to somebody, it lowers their physical defense. You can use the Torn Wing ability with Sephiroth to negate that. Here, I want to show that even during his Sigil Break phase, though, he's still using Crushing Bite. And you can see here where Tifa almost died. I mean, she was less than 1,000 HP. So really, you gotta keep your eye on everything while this fight's going on. And like I said, maybe one of the things that's the easiest to forget is this is the very first boss. If you don't kill him fast enough, obviously he will get aggravated eventually and go into this dragon dive. This is an AoE physical attack, and note that we have debuffed his physical attack by high potency at this point. And it still does about 1,700 damage to everybody. So you can imagine that if he did not have the high potency debuff, that's probably going to do, I would say, close to 1,000 more damage, probably 2,500 plus. And if he has, any sort of debuff on somebody, very likely that somebody can die from that move. And so this is the main reason that I brought the physical attack debuff, because even as the very first boss, I really struggled with him. Why I call him the most annoying. And our score sucks. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Here, I take the physical defense plus 50% because Rude at the end is kind of a physical attack dynamo. Come down here, you'll have your first add-on fight, it's no big deal. Next, we are taking on Mad Anchor because I think he is the next most annoying boss. Why? Because of all the shields that he does. And so the first thing I'm going to try to do is get as much damage in early on as I can before this initial threat assessment, because once he performs this, he's going to put up a wind barrier. It's also going to be physical barrier. So for the next little bit of time, we're feeling like we're really just hardly able to do any sort of damage to him. scale pistols. So what he's going to do here, he's going to target a single person. He's going to first reduce their resistance to wind. Then shortly after that, he's going to hit them with a wind attack. I like to just get on Tifa and use solid mana ward, to up their magic defense. Because since it is a single target, it's pretty easy to kind of counteract some of that. Afterwards, he does an AoE physical attack, and then eventually he'll do the threat assessment again. Now this time, we've been hitting him with all this fire, so he's going to put up the flame ward and magic resist. This is our opportunity to actually get in a lot of damage, and you'll notice that I'm hitting him for 12,000 and 14,000 as opposed to like 1,200. So that's kind of why we set up our team this way, specifically those Fyras with Mad Anchor in mind, because I honestly do think he's an annoying boss. And I can tell you, if you don't kill him fast enough, what happens is he starts buffing himself. He'll be giving himself magic and attack buffs, and he'll just kind of start stacking them one by one throughout the fight until he's at, like, see right here, you can see the first 2 stacks. It's not unheard of for him to get to like 4 stacks of this by the end of the fight, and then he starts really, really wreaking havoc on your team. So that's why we're fighting him second, because, like I said, I think he's quite annoying, especially because, you know, we're trying to focus on wind, and we're kind of limited with, you know, what we need to bring into this dungeon in general. Now you see that he's got high potency on both attack and magic. And so anyway, he's just an annoying boss, and really like to get him out of the way. I can tell you a lot of runs I did him first, and my suggestion is if you do him first, you would probably want to do the dragon third. That's just because I'm going to take the buff here where we're going to get wind potency plus 15%, healing potency minus 50. But in the meantime, I also want to talk about this wind resist down duration plus 20 seconds. This was offered in the other dungeon as well, and I wonder if they're not planning on releasing a banner that maybe gives us some sort of wind breach for Yuffie, maybe? That would be not unheard of. Here, the next fight, Zoo. We're going to go ahead and just kind of do the combo to try to get the add-ons cleared out. This is a pretty easy fight, mostly because you can debuff his physical defense, and, you know, that's what we've brought. He doesn't do anything super, I don't know, unorthodox or anything super strong. He does do Great Gale. However, you can debuff his physical attack, and it is a physical attack move. So our AI went ahead and did that for us. Just really not that big of a deal. The only thing I will say is during Blusterous Veil, you do need to actually typically try to break him because he puts up a wind shield during that time. So, yeah, just go ahead and, you know, finish him off. It's really not that big of a problem. And the reason, if I was going to fight Mad Anchor first, why I would fight him second before the dragon is because here you get a chance to take healing potency plus 50%, essentially neutralizing that debuff that we just took, and I wouldn't want to go up against the dragon having my healing debuffed. Come over here, get your 4 arrow cocktails, and then there's an add-on fight up here, which I am going to show. I'll have it sped up, but I just want to show it because it's kind of randomly stronger than what I was expecting the first couple of times. There's only 2 of these birds, but most of the add-on fights, or at least the first add-on fight that we had here, you can pretty much one-shot all of the mobs. Here, you're going to have to plan on probably hitting them about 3 times with your main damage dealers. Maybe even 4, and they will eventually start charging up some stuff. I only say this because if you go in, you know, thinking it's going to be a walk in the park, it can take you by surprise. Here, we're going to go ahead and use an item, and I believe it's just going to be 2 arrow cocktails, one on Sephiroth, one on Tifa, and the reason is we have these tents, but we haven't gotten any supplements yet, and you won't get them until we clear this boss, and I really don't want to use the last tent until I can actually make it really effective for my team, so that's what we're going to do. As usual, we're going to try to make sure we kill off the add-ons first, because all of these fights kind of take a little bit of time, and it's just much easier if we're not getting needled by the add-ons, who oftentimes are also putting on really, really big debuffs to our team. The stun here is a little bit annoying, but right after he does it, he goes into his bootloading program, and you want to break this as fast as possible because Tank Buster is coming up right afterwards, and its damage is based on, you know, how fast you break the sigils. But it is a magical attack, so the next thing we will do once this is interrupted, or once this interrupt is over, sorry, is we will get on Aerith, and we see that Tifa's been targeted by Tank Buster. It's a magic attack. We'll do a couple solid mana wards to give her magic, you know, defense up, and the Tank Buster here at 30%, and that's 2,440 damage with high potency magic defense increase. So don't take it lightly, because I can tell you, if that had been even a 40% Tank Buster, I think Tifa would have still died. So even though I think this fight is considerably easier than the first two, it's still nothing to be taken lightly. The biggest mistake I probably made in this run was using that Ramuh right there to finish him off. There was really no reason for that, and I think it hurt my score a lot, and I'll explain that coming up. Physical defense here we take again, just we want to stay alive. I had so many runs that were going so well where I died to Rude at the end, because once he one-shots like one of your primary damage dealers, man, things just are impossible from there. I made some more mistakes here. I used too many supplements because I didn't factor in. I was only thinking about the tent getting everybody to full HP and not the fact that it also takes 25% of your max HP up. That was a mistake. So two big things that could have increased my score here were not using quite as many items there. And then also, if I had the Ramuh here, I could have used it at the very beginning of this battle, and I don't think it would have completely killed those dorky faces, but it would have done a big deal. And yeah, I should have done things a little different, but I was probably just a little bit fatigued. This was my 10th run, and I had already done Fort Tamlin before this. So in the beginning here, he has this gauge, this Aegis gauge, and if you break it, it stuns him and removes his buffs. Also, though, if you can see, those dorky faces are putting that high potency magic attack and physical attack down on my guys. And I kept trying to click on that guy. You can see me, like, I keep trying to click on him, but until I got over to Aerith, I just, for some reason, the game would not recognize that I was trying to switch over and kill that guy. Just a lot of things were happening in this run that were very frustrating for me. And I think, you know, just kind of being frustrated in general, because you can imagine how long I spent by the time I was on my 10th run. And although I do have fun experimenting with the builds, I was a little bit annoyed to figure out that this was my last attempt that I would get. So I guess my take on this, or my advice, is there's some things I could have done cleaner. How much better my score could have gotten from this particular run, it's hard to say. But I think it could have been considerably better if I just would have been a little bit fresher and, you know, kind of just went through this a little bit more methodically and less, you know, panicky at certain times. Rude, I can say, the main thing about him, his physical attacks hurt. So we are going to focus on solid barrier, because once you get to about this point, he's going to single target. He does this fist clench. And this is going to be a single target attack where he just kind of unleashes a series of like 5 different attacks. They're small, but they add up. And then he does the big attack that he's channeling, Haymaker. So solid barrier the person that he's targeted, and then try to get off a heal in the middle of this. This is exactly how I survived this. If you notice, I got the solid barrier off. I also got Akira off, and then the Haymaker comes in and it hits for 2,300. Now, also think about the fact that we took 2 plus 50% physical defense buffs in our, you know, symbol boss buffs. So that plus the mid-potency defense buff, and it still did 2,300, and I think Aerith's base defense was around 155. So just something to think about. Here he goes into a circle sigil break phase. It says that he'll counter physical ruins, but it didn't when I used it. Maybe I got lucky, or maybe the game's bugged. I'll leave that up to you to decide. We are finally in the home stretch, and probably the only nice thing about this final boss is that he can be debuffed. This is like one of the main reasons we brought Tifa's Somersault instead of something else, so that we could kill him a little bit faster. And there you have it. That is the dungeon. Mythril Mine finally cleared. Not the score that we're going to be hoping for, but I think for a team that's under 180,000 combat power, I don't think it's a bad score at all, and hopefully this helps you at least have some sort of an idea, you know, as to what you're going to need for these bosses and how you want to navigate this particular dungeon. I do think this is the probably most difficult dungeon that we've had so far. And so I know I've heard a lot of people in comments on my Fort Tamblin guide talking about how hard of a time they've had with this. So hopefully this helps. Let me know if it does. Subscribe for future content if you're not already. I appreciate everybody's support. And as always, thanks for watching.